Oh, this is glorious, almost poetic in the way life balances itself, because something happened behind closed doors that you were never meant to hear about, and yet deep inside you already felt it in that quiet place where truth vibrates before it's ever spoken. That subtle shift in atmosphere you sensed wasn't imagination. They really did gather because of you, not for idle gossip or harmless chatter, but an intentional, coordinated meeting where people sat down with the shared purpose of figuring out how to handle you, contain you, undermine you, because you had somehow become too powerful, too unsettling, too undeniable to ignore any longer. Somewhere deep in your instincts, in that sacred place in your chest, where truth whispers long before the world confirms it, you already sensed the atmosphere shift. You felt the tension in the air, that unexplainable feeling like the room changed even when you weren't in it, because the energy around your name started vibrating differently. And here's why. They didn't just gossip. They didn't just whisper from the shadows. They didn't just trade petty stories in private. They organized, they scheduled, they committed time, energy, and intention to talk about you like you were a situation that required management, a force that needed to be contained, like you had evolved into something too influential to ignore. So they gathered with fake politeness and sharpened motives, wearing friendly faces while harboring venomous intentions, sitting there united in resentment, ready to dissect your character, dismantle your reputation, and play judge, jury, and executioner of your name. Picture them, people who laughed with you, people who pretended to support you, people who benefited from your kindness and still chose betrayal, people who praise you publicly just to curse you in private, all sitting shoulder to shoulder, bonded not by truth, not by righteousness, not by justice, but by insecurity, jealousy, fear, and bitterness dressed up as concern, and they thought they were strong because they believed numbers equal power. They believed collective hatred equals certainty. They believed if they all agreed on the same lie, it would magically become truth. And for a moment, they felt so confident. They hyped each other up, exaggerated your flaws, twisted your actions, magnified your mistakes, invented narratives to justify why you deserved to be targeted, convincing themselves they were righteous when in reality they were just scared of someone who refused to shrink for their comfort. But then the universe did something absolutely beautiful, something breathtakingly precise. The alliance that was forged against you began to crumble from the inside, not because you pleaded, not because you defended yourself, not because you even knew this was happening, but because truth has a gravitational pull that lies cannot escape. And halfway through their plotting, something shifted inside that room. Someone's conscience woke up, someone's memory refused to stay silent, someone who had been nodding along suddenly felt uncomfortable, suddenly remembered the real you, the honest you, the genuine human being beneath the manufactured villain they were trying to sculpt. And in that moment, the first fracture appeared, the first crack in their supposed unity. Then another person started thinking, then another, then another. Memories resurfaced, real encounters resurfaced. Moments where you showed kindness, loyalty, integrity, strength, compassion. Those truths stood up like giants in the middle of their accusations. And before they even realized what was happening, half the room switched sides. Half of them refused to continue. Half of them said, "I'm done contributing to this." Do you understand the magnitude of that? This wasn't hesitation. This wasn't confusion. This was betrayal of the betrayal. Their unity shattered mid-attack. Their army divided before the battle even began. Your enemies could not even remain united in their hatred of you because truth poisoned their conspiracy and integrity, sabotaged their plan from within. And the most incredible part, you weren't even there. You didn't speak. You didn't defend yourself. You didn't fight, beg, argue, or prove anything. Your silence became a weapon sharper than their plans. Your absence was louder than any speech you could have given. Your character spoke in your place. Your history stood up in that room like a witness and testified on your behalf without saying a single word. people remembered how you showed up for them when no spotlight was present. They remembered how you helped without asking for credit. They remembered the real human being behind the accusations. Truth didn't need your voice. It carried your essence on its own. And those who switched sides? They walked out transformed, uncomfortable with how close they came to participating in something ugly, now unable to deny what they know about you. They became silent protectors, quiet defenders, witnesses who may never openly announce it, but will never again participate in your destruction. Meanwhile, look at the ones who stayed. Look at the ones who refused to leave the camp of hatred. Before this, they were shielded by the illusion that everyone felt this way. They hid inside the crowd, comforted by false unity, believing their bitterness was normal because it was shared. But now they stand exposed. Now the reasonable people have exited the room. Now only the most resentful, the most insecure, the most deeply jealous remain, and they can no longer pretend their hatred is righteousness. Now it is naked, obvious, undeniable, and they are forced to look in the mirror of their own intentions. They've been revealed. The line has been drawn. The crowd they hid behind disappeared, leaving them alone with their darkness, and whether they admit it or not, that truth is burning them from the inside. While all of this unfolds, something else is happening silently in your favor. Those who switch sides are thinking about you differently now. They're reflecting. They're replaying past interactions. They're realizing that your name only became a target because it threatened fragile egos, because your presence exposed insecurities, because your growth reminded stagnant people of their own lack of movement, because your authenticity irritated those addicted to pretending. And without you lifting a finger, without you speaking a word, you won something monumental. You proved that integrity doesn't require defense, that truth doesn't need a microphone, that real character survives even when you're not in the room. A war was waged against you in private, and you still won in silence. That is power. That is destiny. That is divine protection. And whether they like it or not, the story has already changed. The energy has already shifted, and the world is beginning to see what they tried so desperately to hide. You were never the problem. You were the revelation they weren't ready to face. They are lying awake tonight, but the darkness isn't heavy with the weight of guilt for leaving the group. Instead, it is filled with a profound, soul-deep sense of relief. It is the relief of someone who has finally stepped back from a ledge they didn't realize they were standing on, realizing with a shuddering breath that they didn't become part of something truly ugly. They are finally listening to that small, persistent voice in the back of their mind that had been whispering, "This isn't right," for weeks, and they feel a surge of gratitude that when they look in the mirror tomorrow, they won't have to see a face that participated in the cold, coordinated destruction of another human being. In the quiet of the night, their memory is beginning to function again, independent of the mob's script, and they are recalling all the moments they witnessed that directly contradicted the narrative they were fed. They are remembering the times they saw your genuine kindness and were told to forget it, or the instances where you were entirely sincere and they allowed others to convince them it was just a clever form of manipulation. The scales are falling from their eyes with a painful clarity, and what they are seeing in the aftermath makes them feel physically sick, not sick of you, but sick of themselves, and how easily they were led down a path of hatred without ever stopping to ask why. The thing about these people who switch sides is that they don't just fade into neutrality. They transform into witnesses and living proof that the case against you cannot hold up under the light of honest examination. They have become walking testimonies to the fact that when a reasonable person is forced to look at the actual evidence of your life, they conclude that you are not the monster you've been painted as. Now, every time those bitter few try to spread their poison, there is someone who was actually in that room ready to stand up and say that they left because the accusations simply weren't true. Every time they try to recruit new people into their cycle of hatred, there is a defector ready to tell the real story. And every time they try to paint you as universally despised, They are met with the proof that half the people who showed up to hate you ended up defending you instead. Your enemies have accidentally created your most powerful character witnesses by gathering people to testify against you, only to have half the room testify in your favor. If you look deeper, this reveals something incredible about you. Your character was strong enough to defend itself in a room full of people committed to destroying it. And your truth was powerful enough to convert enemies into allies without you even having to speak a single word. You've likely spent so much time worried about the lies being told and the narratives being constructed, fearing they would become the accepted truth. But you can see now what happens when those lies are actually tested against the reality of who you are. The fact that half a hostile room walked out, rather than participate in your destruction, isn't luck or coincidence. It is the harvest of seeds you planted in people's hearts long ago. It is the result of every time you chose integrity over convenience, and every time you were real when being fake would have been easier. You were building a defense you didn't even know you'd need, and now that defense is active, working on your behalf in rooms you aren't even in. They thought they could control the narrative through volume and consensus, forgetting that some people still have consciences and can only lie to themselves for so long before the truth surfaces. As for the ones who stayed, the committed haters, they are going to escalate their behavior because they have been exposed and their group has been decimated. They are now standing in a half-empty room surrounded only by the bitter, and they will get louder and more desperate to compensate for losing half their army. But desperation is not strength, and the fact that they are screaming louder is merely proof that they are losing the war. You don't need to strategize or change. You just need to keep being the person whose life speaks for itself, outlasting the lies and letting your absence be louder than their accusations. You have already won because you didn't have to fight, and because your truth did the work for you, leaving your enemies to stand alone in the wreckage of their own failed plan. And what's unfolding next is even more powerful, because the story doesn't end with them walking out of that room. This is only the beginning of the ripple effect that is about to reshape everything around your name, your reputation, your destiny. Because those who left with awakened conscience are carrying something with them now. Not just relief, not just clarity, but responsibility. The kind that quietly weighs on a person when they realize they almost contributed to irreversible damage. They are replaying that room in their minds, seeing the bitterness on the faces of the ones who stayed, seeing the ugliness of what they were moments away from participating in, and now they are looking at you with new eyes, eyes that no longer see you through the distorted lens others handed them, but through their own lived experience, through real memories, through real interactions, and this internal shift is going to change the conversations happening everywhere. They will talk differently about you now. They will defend you in rooms where your name comes up. They will correct lies before they spread. They will silence rumors before they take root. Even if they don't loudly announce loyalty, they will quietly protect your name because they simply cannot go back to pretending they don't know the truth. And that quiet protection is often far more powerful than loud loyalty, because it shows up in unexpected places, in private conversations, in subtle corrections, in those small moments that actually shape how people perceive you. Without knowing it, you've gained shield bearers, not loud warriors, but silent guardians of your truth, moving through the world like living reminders that integrity still matters. Meanwhile, the bitterness of the ones who stayed is fermenting into something corrosive, because hatred that no longer has universal agreement begins to rot. It begins to turn inward. It begins to expose the hollowness beneath it. They will try to regroup. They will try to convince themselves they are still justified. They will work even harder to twist new stories, but their narrative is permanently weakened because now there are witnesses who can say, "I was there, and I couldn't agree with this." Their credibility has cracked. Their illusion of moral superiority has shattered. And deep down, even they know it. That's why they will get louder, more dramatic, more extreme in their claims. Because when lies begin to collapse, their only survival tactic is volume. But volume doesn't equal truth. Desperation doesn't equal righteousness. The more they try to force their narrative now, the more obvious it becomes that their hatred isn't rooted in justice or principle. It's rooted in jealousy, insecurity, and fear of the power you carry just by existing authentically. And the longer this goes on, the harder it becomes for them to pretend they are driven by anything other than personal darkness, because there's nothing noble left to hide behind. And here's the part that should make you stand a little taller, breathe a little deeper, and trust yourself a little more. You are not just surviving this. You are being vindicated by forces you didn't even know were operating in your favor. This wasn't you campaigning, convincing, begging, proving, or fighting. This was your life speaking for itself, your history standing as evidence, your character acting as testimony. In a courtroom you didn't even attend. The seeds you planted, the kindness you showed, the consistency you demonstrated, the authenticity you lived, they grew into shields when you needed them most. You built a legacy of truth so strong that even when lies gathered in private, they couldn't stand against it. And that is the kind of victory no one can take from you. It's not temporary. It's not fragile. It's not dependent on public opinion. It's rooted in who you are at your core. So now the future looks different. The atmosphere around your name has changed. The narrative is no longer controlled by people who hate you. It is slowly, quietly, inevitably returning to alignment with who you really are. Opportunities that were blocked begin to open again. People who were unsure begin to reconsider. Connections that were strained start to repair themselves. And you don't have to chase any of it. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to torture yourself wondering who believes what about you, because life has already begun correcting the record. Your only job now is to keep walking, keep growing, keep being exactly who you are without shrinking, without dimming, without apologizing for the light that made insecure people uncomfortable. You came out of this not only standing but transformed, stronger than before, surrounded not by a crowd of loud supporters, but by a circle of undeniable truth that speaks even when you don't. And the ones who tried to destroy you, they now have to live with the reality that even when they united, plotted, and gathered against you, they still couldn't win. Because you were never standing alone in the first place. You were standing with truth. And truth, no matter how long it takes, always, always wins. And this is where the story shifts from survival to ascension. Because what you're stepping into now isn't just relief from attack. It is elevation born from endurance, a rising that wasn't fueled by rage or revenge, but by resilience and unshakable truth. Life is rearranging things around you. Paths that were blocked are loosening. People who once doubted are quietly reconsidering. Doors that slammed shut are beginning to creak open again. Not because you forced them, but because reality is correcting itself around your name. Those who once questioned you will feel an unexplainable pull to reevaluate who you are. Those who once stood at a distance will feel drawn back, not by persuasion, but by the undeniable clarity that truth eventually brings. You are stepping into a season where silence becomes strength, where vindication doesn't arrive in dramatic explosions, but in the slow, steady unfolding of alignment. This is what happens when you endure without becoming bitter, when you refuse to let cruelty mutate your character. You didn't break, you didn't bow, you didn't become like them. And because of that, what is ahead of you is not just restoration, it is transformation. So now breathe. Stand still for a moment inside this shift and feel it. This isn't coincidence. This isn't luck. This isn't random. This is alignment, protection, and divine orchestration converging in your favor. And now we pray, May every lie spoken against you dissolve in the presence of truth. May every hidden meeting meant to harm you transform into unseen protection working in your favor. May the weight of falsehood fall away while the strength of your character rises like a shield around you. May those who once stood against you be confronted with clarity, and those who stood for you be strengthened in courage. May you walk forward covered in peace, guided by wisdom, surrounded by grace, and anchored in the deep knowing that you are seen, protected, and upheld by something far greater than human schemes. May your spirit stay pure, your heart stay kind, your purpose stay strong, and may every step ahead of you be divinely aligned, powerfully guarded, and beautifully blessed. Amen. If this spoke to you, if you felt this in your spirit, if you've ever been the one they gathered to tear down, but somehow you still rose, then don't carry this strength alone. Share this message with someone who needs to be reminded they are protected even when they're not present in the room. Drop a comment if you've ever been through this silent battle and came out stronger. And if you want to help me keep creating messages like this, consider supporting the channel. Like, subscribe, and if you're able, donate or become a channel member to help this voice continue reaching those who need healing, clarity, and power. Your support keeps this message alive. Stay strong. Stay grounded. Your truth is louder than their lies, and your story isn't done yet.